Hey guys, it's Morgan coming to you with the Shlog, episode number 9. Sorry that this is a day late. We missed a day because I had a super stressful, really horrible day. I lost my wonderful puppy. Hey Leia, come here. Come up here. Come up here. Come on. I lost this girl on a hike on Monday. We went for a hike and she got scared by a big mean dog. And she ran away, which she's never done before. And she's a really great dog most of the time. She ran away, and we lost her. I couldn't find her. It was horrible. I spent all day Monday hiking, looking for her, yelling for her. Lots of people, lots of wonderful, wonderful people came out and helped. Gave us great suggestions on what to do. Here's a little information for you guys, not really have anything to do with motorcycles, but if you ever lose a dog, we put her kennel with a bunch of our clothes in it out where we saw her last. And anyway, we spent all day Monday into the night, got up before the sun came up Tuesday, and looked, and around 1 o'clock or maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon, she showed back up at her kennel. Thank you, God, and thank you, people, for all the wonderful suggestions and help. She came back to us, so I didn't film a Shlog yesterday. So here we are, back at it after the Shlog. We got some motorcycles in the shop to work on. I got to finish up a couple ATVs this morning, so I won't film that because it's not even interesting. It's not diagnosis or anything. It's just, yeah, so we're back at it, guys. Sorry we missed a day. Can't wait to get after it. Hey, guys. All right. We are back at the shop and getting ready to work on some stuff. So I have to finish that thing up real fast. Real fast. That's a funny thing. Anyway, but then we're going to work on that. Back to dirt bikes. So, yeah, I'm going to do that thing and not bore you guys with that, and then we'll get on to dirt bikes. So we'll see you here in just a bit. Quick update on this thing. I finally talked the customer into letting me order parts. So I'm stoked about that. Those are on the way. But now we got to move it off the lift and get to the project for the day, which is a Honda CRF 250X. Customer complaint is that it doesn't run. It's been sitting a fair amount. And, you know, it just needs some love, right? So we got some carb stuff coming for it. I think we got a pet cock coming for it. It's leaking too. But I am going to check the valves because that's what Hondas do, right? So Honda CRFs, up until they started putting stainless intakes in them in 09 for the R models. I don't know if they actually have for the X models, but Hondas tend to chew up intake valves pretty fast. And I don't know exactly why. I've heard some different theories. One of my favorite theories is actually from a guy who's really, really smart, engineer, lives in California, older dude. I think he's probably 75 now, still hauls the mail on a motorcycle and still races 1,000 every year. But anyway, he was telling me that Honda uses a CNC machine to cut the seats of their head, you know, when they're producing them instead of a spinning thing. And on a microscopic level, there's little ridges in there, right? Because the CNC is doing X, Y, X, Y, X, Y, X, Y around it. Even though it's like micro, it's not super smooth. And that would break down the coating on the titanium valve faster than normal, which would then make it wear faster. I don't know if that's true or not, but, you know, if that's the way it's done, I could totally see that happening. All right, so quick story time. One of my favorite stories, actually. So the Honda valve thing is a real deal. It's all there is to it. You can Google it and whatever. You see that Hondas chew up valves. Every now and then you'll get someone that has one that doesn't. We actually had a customer. He treated his bike like absolute poo. Didn't take care of the air filter. Didn't change the oil enough. And his valves lasted forever. So it does happen. But generally they're rough. So I was in Mexico in 2007, pre-running for the Baja 1000 at night by myself out in this section from Bay of LA over to San Ignacio. if you know that area, it's super fun section. It's fast and easy, and anyway, super cool. So I was pre-running. My guys are going to meet me in San Ignacio. And while I'm doing this, I'm going along, and there's some guys ahead of me, and I was starting to catch them. And I was like, okay, cool. It's night, 10 o'clock at night. There's no lights, nothing. Just, I see two headlights ahead of me and me. So I come up to this intersection, and there they are. They're stopped, and they're hanging out, putting gas in their bikes. I think they carried some. And I was stopping to do the same thing because it was a long stretch, like 180 miles, and the bike I was on wouldn't do that without putting some gas in. So I stopped, and this guy comes and he's like, hey, you okay? I'm like, yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm just out here by myself. He's like, oh, cool. He's like, so you know your way? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And he's like, oh, right on. And he goes to shake my hand. He's like, yeah, my name's Johnny. I'm like, oh, you're Johnny Campbell. So totally meet Johnny Campbell in the middle of the night in Baja. Super cool. Great guy. Super nice. He had actually stopped there because he had seen me back there and was kind of worried that there was just one light. And he's like, I don't know. So he's just checking on me, which is awesome. So super great guy. So I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, all right, we're going to take off. So they take off. I go along, and I start catching a light. And I'm like, oh, cool. It must be Johnny's buddy, because he was with a friend that was also racing that year. Not for factory Honda, but just another guy. And I catch up to the bike, and I look over, and it's freaking Johnny on his buddy's bike. I'm like, whoa, cool. So I pass him, and he's kind of going slow, and the guy's lights are kind of bouncing around, like on the bike bouncing around. So I'm like, ugh, okay. So I pass him. We get to the next intersection, and there's his buddy. And Johnny pulls up, and he's like, dude, you can take your bike back. This thing's a pile. And it was the guy's pre-run bike, not his race bike. And he's like, yeah. He's like, I had to zip tie your lights back on and all this stuff. And I'm laughing. And I'm like, hey, it's really nice to meet you guys. Thanks so much for being cool. Like, yeah, no problem. And so we're talking, just kind of hanging out there in the middle of the night. We just had a road section left to get into town, so we weren't in a big hurry. And I am talking to him, and I said, Johnny, I got to ask you a question. So I'm a mechanic. I work on CRFs all the time. The valves are always a problem. It's seriously a nightmare. And he's like, I told him, we just put stainless steel valves in them because that's the fix for it. It seems to, cut new seats, stainless steel valves don't have any problems. And he's kind of nodding and smiling, and I was like, so what do you guys do to that bike, your race bikes down here, these Hondas, to last? Because, like, if I took a stock CRF out and tried to race the 1,000, it wouldn't even make it. It would stop starting somewhere down the peninsula. And he just gets this huge smile on his face, and he kind of laughs, and he's like, man, this bike right here that I'm riding is 3 years of full-time development from Honda. He's like, this thing is not like the ones you can buy. And I'm like, well, yeah. He's like, no. The only thing on this bike that you could purchase are the cases and the cylinder. That's it. The cases and this, every other piece of it was more or less custom built for the Baja team. And they have multiples of them, of the bikes, but that was it. It's like a completely custom one-off bike. And I was like, that is awesome. So I looked at his buddy who'd been riding it for the last section. I'm like, so how is it? And he's like, dude, I can't even describe how good this motorcycle is. I was like, oh, that is awesome. So cool. So anyway, just a quick story. My brush with fame, Johnny Campbell, one of the coolest dudes I've ever met. Just a really great dude. And proof that there are still works bikes out there. And I love it. So time to get this TTR off here and get the CRF up and get to work. All right, so I said I was going to check the valves on this thing, but I was looking at the work order, and it doesn't call for that. It does call for rebuilding the carburetor and fixing the petcock, like I mentioned before. But let me just show you something real fast, like what you can do to check the valves on a bike without actually checking the valves. And now, obviously, this is not a tried and true, perfect situation, and it does not replace actually checking the valves to find out if they're just barely out of spec or on one side or the other. So this is, don't get me wrong, this is not a way of getting out of checking valves, and we definitely don't charge anyone for this. But what you can do is, you've worked on enough of these like I have, and you know what it should feel like as you kick it through, the compression. And if it feels like it's got plenty of compression, which this one does, especially for a 250. It's most likely the valves are at least close enough for it to run. Because what happens when a valve tightens up is, here, let me grab a valve. I'll show you. That is what a good valve is supposed to look like. And if you look at this right here, this is called the face, that angled part. The face of that valve is nice and flat. I mean, it's a cone going around it, but it's nice and flat. That's what a good valve looks like. A bad valve, the face right there, how it's cupped, that's a valve that's wearing out. And what happens is it sucks up into the head, and then the cam that's sitting right here starts to hold it open a little bit, and the bike starts to lose compression. So that's why you roll it through with the kicker to see if the compression feels good. If the compression feels good, then probably they're at least in spec enough to run. It does not mean that they're in spec. It does not mean that they're correct, but it does mean that the bike will probably run and run just fine. Now, I'm going to call them and ask them if they want me to go ahead and do a valve check / adjustment just to make sure, but the bike feels good. So now, you know, I got to take all the stuff out of the way for that job anyway to get the carburetor off. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the carburetor off, get it in our ultrasonic spa, so it's ready for tomorrow when the carb kit shows up. So we got the carburetor off, and if you've ever wondered what it takes to get the carburetor off of a CRF 250X, yeah, and then this, all that has to come off, and you gotta get the subframe out of the way just to get this silly little thing here on the bench. That's why it's not free. To do that, it takes a lot of work. And then actually working on the carburetor takes a fair amount of like skill and knowledge, because it's a pretty complicated carburetor, the FCR. Now, I have a complete video just on going through the FCR carburetor. Talks about the mid-body gasket, jetting, all that stuff. So I'm going to put a card up here so you guys check that out. It's a good one, I think. Turned out pretty good. Yeah, if you want to see the more in-depth video on the fixing the FCR carburetor, check that out. There'll also be a link in the description. But now we're just going to take this thing apart and get it into the ultrasonic spa so that it can be happy. And then, yeah, we'll be good to go. Also, you guys asked me to show you what it looks like, how much solution and stuff like that to put in this ultrasonic spa. I like to call it the spa because it's funny. But anyway, the ultrasonic cleaner, so I will show you that in just a second. So I'm going to get this thing apart into its different components so we can put it all in there separately, clean it all out, and get it ready for the carb kit. Alright, so let me just show you something. See that needle? That green, I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but that's real greenish stuff. That's what old gas does. It kind of turns green and weird, then it makes this like solid deposits on there. So that thing, if we put gas to it, it would never have sealed. So that's part of the kit that we got coming. Is a new flow needle. Alright, now like I said, I have a way more in-depth video on this, but take a look at this gasket. It's supposed to be like an O-ring, but you can see how all mushed out it is, and there's these tiny little holes in there, and it's just gnarly. So always a good idea to replace this thing. If the bike's older, then, you know, I don't know. Pretty much if it's old enough to have a carburetor on it, and you're having carburetor problems, you got to take this apart and replace it. And when you do this, you need to get this off too, because there's another part of the gasket under there. So there's two tiny little screws down in there. You got to get those out. All this stuff is honestly stuff that a lot of people don't do when they clean your carburetor. So just make sure this stuff kind of gets done. If you take it to a shop, talk to them, say, hey, I want to make sure the mid-body gasket gets taken care of. I want it all apart, all that stuff. Just, you know, be upfront with them, because honestly, some folks just don't know. They just haven't dealt with it enough, or, you know, they got some new kid in the back that doesn't know. You know, he may be a good mechanic, but he just, you know, hasn't been around. I mean, if you got a 20-year-old back there, he may never have, you know, ridden a modern 4-stroke that had a carburetor. So got the accelerator pump off too, so that's good. All right, now it's in lots of parts. Pretty much all the rubber's off of it. Now let's go take it to the ultrasonic. Let me show you how we set that thing up. All right, so we're over here. Shop sink, dirty, gnarly, whatever. So what I do is I run the hot water. I've already done this, so it's already nice and hot. But I get the water nice and hot. Come over here, fill this thing up. Not much to it here, but I'll show you guys. A lot of you guys have been asking me, how much soap, what kind of stuff you put in it. So let me say, first of all, I like Fabuloso the best. It smells great. It's funny to buy it because you feel like a Mexican grandmother getting ready to clean a floor, but it works amazingly well. But what also works really well is this stuff. Green Clean from the Green Company. I have a bunch of it, so I'm trying to burn through that, honestly, before I buy more Fabuloso. I like the Fabuloso better, but the important part is the amount that I put in, right? So because I put the same amount of this as I do the Fabuloso, and that's what you guys have been asking, right? So, and I know there's a lot of you guys out there watching that are very precise, and you like to do things like exactly right and all that. I'm not that guy. When it comes to building motors, absolutely, 100%. And when it comes to doing suspension work and things like that, you bet. I want to have it right on the money, perfect. When it comes to soap in an ultrasonic cleaner, I'm not that guy. So let me show you how I do it. So get this filled up. It's about like that. And take this, and I go like this. Till the color's about right. No joke, that's what I do. I'm sure I could measure that. I'm not gonna. It's not worth it. The other nice thing about filling it up with really hot water is that you're already way up in the temp range for when you're gonna cook these things. So it usually comes out about 40 degrees Celsius. This is our hot water here. And I'll go ahead and just start it at that. I like to run the ultrasonic cleaner at about 60 degrees Celsius, but 40 is plenty hot to start working. And then once you start it, by the time the timer rolls off, it'll be up to close to 60. And the timing, when I'm doing a carburetor, I do about 40 minutes. It's a long time, but it gets them super clean, as you guys have seen in the past. So let's go dump that thing in there. So I just plugged it in, and sure enough, right at 38, so pretty close to 40 like I thought. Yeah, and so like I said, I'll have a link in the description for this from Amazon. They're like 180 bucks. They're totally worth it if you do a lot of work on really anything, because you can clean anything in there if it fits. This is the 10-liter version. They make them even bigger. This is big enough for me. I can get, if I disassemble a shock, I can get that in there. I can get a lot of parts in there. So little guy, tray, so you can get the stuff out easily. And take our carburetor, doink, doink, doink. Then little parts I put in here so I don't lose them. That all in there. Lid on the top. 40 minutes, 21. I don't know why it says 21 seconds. Probably because I was close and turned the temp so we can go on. So it says 80 right there. It'll never get there because it'll be done before it gets to that hot. So that way it's heading towards 60-ish. And go like that. Good to go. So now we wait. While we're waiting, I'm going to go and take a look at the rest of this motorcycle. Make sure everything's good. I did already notice that the fork seals were leaking and that the shock was leaking. Called the customer. They don't want to do it. Fair enough. It's another almost $500 to service both those and get new seals and everything. So I get it. It's a lot of money. Their bill right now is going to be just over $200. So to add another $5, it changes the game. I get it.
But I'm going to try real hard to talk him into saving some money over the winter before it gets nice and doing it before we actually start riding. Because suspension leaking ends up being a safety issue eventually, right? Because the forks can leak onto the brake, and that's no good. You don't want oil on your brakes. And then the shock, if it leaks enough, turns into a pogo stick, and then it's super unsafe to ride. As you're going down the trail, you hit a rock and doing, and wants to bounce you all over the place. So we'll work on that. We'll see if we can't get him talked into it. But I get it. Not everybody's got a lot of money. Part of the deal. Part of the daily Shlog, guys, is talking to customers and trying to get them proactively getting things done so that their bike works really good, doesn't have problems, and is safe. And that's, you can't always make them do it. So right on. Gonna take a look at this. Let that thing cook. We'll be right back.
All right, so we got carburetor all cleaned up out of the ultrasonic spa. And see, look how shiny and happy that is. Yes. So now we're just waiting for the carb kit. We'll be here tomorrow with the mid-body gasket and all that stuff, so I'm stoked. And the last thing for the day, I got a set of tires to change for a guy who is putting his Spikey tires on so he can go out and ride in the snow. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now to end the day up and go home, have some dinner, hang out with the family. So, Spikey tires, I'm a big fan. I'd have them on my bike if it weren't for my hip having just been replaced. I can't ride till February, so probably going to skip the snow riding. But these right here, they're called grip studs. These are hands down the best spikes I've ever put in a tire for all kinds of riding. Like, they're not the best if you're just going to go ice riding. They're a little too tall and they kind of move a little bit. And there's better solutions out there for that. But if you're going to trail ride and some on a lake and some other, these things are so awesome. They got a carbide tip. The way they go into the tire is really cool. It's like a big auger, so they just don't pull out. They're kind of expensive. They're like $1 a stud if you buy the Grip Studs brand. But actually, there's some better deals out there on some off-brand ones that are actually, I think, the same deal, just sold by another company and branded differently. But you run these in, and then we just take the gold screws and run those in, to fill in the gaps, and that just gives you enough metal to bite on some ice. But man, these things work good. And like, these are already a year old, actually over a year old. I've had a set for 3 years. They've been working great. So yeah, we're gonna swap these out, and he's gonna be able to have a ton of fun all winter long. Well, there we go. Got that changed. Got the front one to do. Thanks, guys, for joining me for the Shlog number 9. Sorry that we're a day late. I hope you understand. So stoked we got the puppy back. My life is a lot better. I really appreciate you guys watching this stuff. If you think we've earned it, please subscribe. It means a ton to us. Also, get the notification bell. Click that thing. Look at that puppy. There's a puppy. Come on, puppy. Hi, puppers. Hi, puppers. Lay up. That's a good dog. Ah, so happy to have that dog back. Anyway, like I said, click the notification bell. Subscribe to the channel if you think we've earned it. Get out, spread the gospel of two wheels, and please find some time to ride your dirt bikes.